We'll keep searching through the darkest day for every soul that's lost or gone. We'll fight until the break of dawn. American justice stands so tall. We won't rest until we found you. For all the lost, both the near and far, you're in our hearts, you're who we are. Through the nights and through the pain, we will say your name again. Every step we take is true as we continue to search for you. American justice stands so tall. We won't rest until there is justice for all. For all the lost, both the near and far, you're in our hearts, you're who we are. We will continue to pray until you're home to stay.
Hey everybody. Okay, I hope you guys can hear me. Okay, so I was not very prepared for this. I got sidetracked while I was getting ready for this. So today we're going to talk about Dusty Turner, and he is a former Navy SEAL from SEAL Team 4, who was imprisoned for 31 years and just recently got released. I tried to do this live the other day, and yeah, it didn't work because I removed myself, which removed all the audio. So we're gonna try this again. Hopefully I don't do that again. So sorry, I'm out of breath. I was trying to hurry up and get some stuff done and got sidetracked. Hello, Superstar Mod and Full Board Trucking. Hello, Shar. Hello, Jerry Lynn. Hello again, Charmaine. And where'd she go? There she is. Hey, Kelly. And hello, Marie. So, so anyway, I'm going to play from, let me put this up. So we're going to go over a podcast that the Antihero did, and it covers this case, and I had a lot of things to say about it, so that's why I tried this the other night and got it all messed up. So Dusty and his SEAL team dive buddy, Billy Joe Brown, were convicted in 1996, I think it was, of the unaliving of Jennifer Evans. And so Billy was sentenced to 72 years, I think it was, and Dusty was sentenced to 82. And after 31 years, Dusty was released, and he was 21 when he was convicted and went to prison. And like I said, this podcast really goes over pretty much all of the details. And scrolling across the bottom, there is a documentary that you can watch. It's called Target of Opportunity, the U.S. Navy SEALs and the Murder of Jennifer Evans. So I'm gonna show this, and we're going to talk about it. And hopefully I don't remove my audio again. So I remember this case. This Dusty Turner is from Bloomington, Indiana, which is about 45 minutes from me. And I remember hearing of this case because it was on our local news. But I was in my teens. I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it. And then I seen that he was released the other day. So somewhere in here, there it is. I'm going to post the link to this podcast if you want to go watch it, because we're going to skip some parts of it, but not a whole lot of it. And we're just going to talk about it and let it play out and talk about what we think. So hopefully you guys can hear me. And let's play. I'm going to start at about 6 minutes in, 6.5 minutes in, just because they're going to go over who the guy is that did the documentary. And then we'll skip forward and play it and talk about it.
With us, we have J.D. Leet. He is a retired chief petty officer, coming out of the comms world. Gave tactical comm support to JSOC, SEAL Team 6, SOC South. You got pulled back into the Navy after 9/11 to go to Afghanistan. I'm sure that didn't break your heart.
Yeah, I was on the retirement list. I was still active duty, but yeah,
it got stopped.
Right.
Guess who's not retiring?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, you are.
Stop hold.
But hey,
yeah.
If especially after 9/11, if you're gonna get stop lost, that's
exactly. Like, I was happy to go.
So I just wanted to play that so that they could introduce this guy. Again, it's J.D. Leet. He is a former SEAL himself, and he is the one who actually made the documentary that is scrolling across the bottom of the screen. So I'm going to skip ahead and let's get into the meat and potatoes of this. It's quite a long broadcast, and then we're going to, like I said, we'll just stop and talk about it.
Very forthcoming about all the details, and even though Dustin isn't completely innocent, by the end of the story you're like, whoa, it's just not right. Like, what, at the end of the day, this isn't right.
And before we get into it, so Dustin and Billy Joe Brown were both convicted of kidnapping, murder, and a couple of other things. And do not get me wrong in this. I do not think Dusty is innocent. I think he is innocent of the murder. But I do not think he's got no wrongdoing in this. And we'll talk about that when it gets to it. I just want that out there. I do not think he's innocent, but I do want to hear what you guys think.
And that's why I thought it was a story worth telling, because of how honest you guys were about it. I almost want to say he wasn't an angel, but we'll get through it. He kind of was. The whole thing's crazy. So
I have a fun fact about JD? He doesn't know I know.
Do you ever wonder how Nectar can offer such an incredible
to me? He has to be put on a stack
I got this
of phone
huge.
books,
I got this huge.
I hooked him up.
Yeah, I pulled this off. I'm 5'4", full 2 meters.
Yeah, full 2 meters. Yeah, when you free fall at the back,
The jump master. Can I swear? Fucking
his feet were probably.
He rode me.
Again, I'd love to talk about. Please stay tuned. You'll hear everything we're alluding to, but Some of the things we talked about, he's not completely innocent, but I can't wait to get into that so you guys understand what I mean by that. But that part of it, how hard was it to get, help on this documentary, or what was it like even getting this type of documentary off the ground?
Well, because I came from that world, I knew, I've been around that world most of my life, and it's a world of secrets, right? That the reason I got good jobs with the SEAL teams was I could keep a secret, right? And, it's not that hard to set up satellite links and laptops, but if you're good at it and you can keep a secret, you'll get lots of work.
Yeah.
And so I retired, and I knew this story didn't make any sense. I was in Virginia Beach when this happened. It happened in 1995. And the story that came out in the media was these two guys were on the prowl for a girl to have group sex with because they were so hungry for tag team sex, or that's what they called it. And of the SEALs that I knew in the community I lived in, this just didn't make any sense. And if they wanted to do that, wouldn't they be awfully good at that? Like if you wanted to abduct a girl. And so, but of course I kept it to myself because it wasn't something that you talked about. But when I got out, I came back from Afghanistan, took some classes, bought a good camera, and went in to talk to Dustin Turner in prison.
Okay.
And I will admit, this starts off kind of boring. He just kind of talks about how he gets into it. But very soon we'll get into the actual case itself. But I think it's important for everybody to understand where this person is coming from in doing this documentary and talking about this case. So you guys let me know in the comments what you think as it goes along. And you guys know me, I'll be stopping and talking about it.
Myself.
Yeah.
And then I took that and some other things, and I took it to Los Angeles, and basically have no connection to anybody. And everybody wants to turn it into the Navy the SEAL teams turned these two innocent kids into psychopaths. And that's just not what happened. You had a psychopath that got let in,
right?
And we trained him to kill,
right?
And that's. I mean, a lot of people say he's a psychopath. I don't. I've studied that a lot about what it takes, but it was very difficult in Hollywood. So I learned to edit.
Yeah.
Sat on the shoulder of somebody, became a decent editor, and made it myself.
And let's go over the names of the two SEALs involved.
Yeah, it's Dusty Turner and Billy Joe Brown, and there's a lot of guys say they were not SEALs yet because they were in the last part of STT, but they had orders to Panama, and everybody in their platoon that I talked to said, yeah, they hadn't put the trident on, but they were SEALs.
Right.
And a lot of people did say that they weren't SEALs yet, but these guys had went through the training. They had deployment orders. They were part of SEAL Team 4. Whether they were sent out yet or not didn't matter. They were already through training. And that is very important, because if anybody knows anything about the military, especially with the Navy or any other branch, if you have a jump partner or you have a buddy, you stick together. And that comes in to play here in just a little bit, because these two were dive partners, and the military breaks you down and embeds things in your brain to where you just do them. You don't ask questions. You're told what to do and you do it. And that's very important to note here as they get into it, because of what happened.
There's one guy who was even quoted as saying, if we were going to go somewhere, they were going with us.
Right.
So if they're a part of the team and they're going with us,
yeah,
they're SEALs.
And Billy was 6'4", 6'3", 230 of roided out muscle. He was a valuable asset to them.
Yeah, that's. He even talks about it in the documentary. He starts out SEAL training and he's 6'4".
Yeah.
So you're going to be a little bit heavier anyway because of your height. I think he starts out at 180 something, and he finishes SEAL training at almost 220.
going through that
That's
training.
insane.
Well, he was going to Mexico he was picking up steroids in Mexico all the time and coming back. He was,
let's dig in a little bit. Well, let's finish getting this thing off. So did you completely self-fund this then?
well,
No one want
I
that?
had flipped property the whole time I was in the, you know how it is. You move. Oh, all right. I'll I put down some carpet or whatever, and so prior to 2008, I was in a pretty good spot financially with properties and rentals and everything. And so everything kind of came collapsing down. I'm in Los Angeles and the whole housing market collapses, and my to fund the editor and all that is gone. So but Dustin Turner gets.
So I wanted to real quick. This here is Jennifer Evans. And this is Dusty Turner, and this is Billy Joe Brown here. This is the name of the documentary, of course, but I wanted you guys to have a face of who they're talking about. You've got 2 6-foot-something men that are in the Navy that are trained to kill, and a very small, petite woman. But I wanted you guys to have an image of what she looks like, because she is the victim in this at the end of the day. But I believe, honestly, Dusty is also a victim in this in a different way. And we'll talk about that. But I wanted you guys to have an image of her.
His day in court in 2008. So I moved to Richmond, Virginia, and which I've connected to Virginia, and so that wasn't that big of a deal. And I knew this story just had such legs. There's not a story out there that has the things going on that happened in this case.
Understatement of the day, right there.
Yeah.
I think the best place to start is understanding who these gentlemen are. I think let's start with
Billy Brown was raised in Huber Heights, Ohio, Dayton, Ohio. His mother had, I think, 4 children by 4 different fathers. He basically was raised by his mother, Pamela, and he had gotten in trouble for beating a girl in one of his classes when he was like 12 years old. He spent a lot of time out of school, expelled. He was arrested when he was 17 for beating his 14-year-old pregnant wife. The cops, yes.
You can't gloss over that for a second.
Yes.
17 years old.
Married. Yes, married. Because she's pregnant. And
to a 14-year-old pregnant wife.
Right. And then when the cops come, he beats 3 of them up before they get him under control.
Really?
Yeah.
What state is that in? I don't know enough about
Ohio.
Yeah.
He joined the Coast Guard and was thrown out within a couple weeks. And Bo Bergdorf.
Bo Bergdorf. Very familiar with Bo Bergdorf.
He was thrown out of the Coast Guard too on this unfit.
So did you guys catch that Billy Joe Turner had initially joined the Coast Guard, and within 2 or 3 weeks was kicked out of the Coast Guard? Now, they'll say it here in a second, but the Coast Guard is generally the butt of all military jokes. They have their place, don't get me wrong. But in the military, the Coast Guard is generally the butt of stories. If you can't make it as a Navy SEAL, anything like that, like, go to the Coast Guard. Marie, they seem to be talking normal speed, are they not? I do have it sped up to like 1.5. I think it is. It's 1.45, so they're speaking a little faster, but to me it's normal. So but just keep in mind, and they'll go over it again here in a second, Billy Joe Brown entered the Coast Guard and was kicked out within 2 to 3 weeks, and somehow made it into being a SEAL. I think that right there is very telling. And I think the military really should, and this is coming from a military kid, they really should have more communication between the branches. In other words, if you're kicked out of one branch of the military, you shouldn't be able to turn around and join another branch of the military, especially when you're kicked out for the reasons he was kicked out.
to serve.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And well, I found this out recently from a psychologist that wrote the Buds. I'm around this stuff all the time. And it was fascinating that we don't really know what happened. And it's rumored that Billy Brown assaulted an instructor, but somehow within a couple of weeks, both Billy and the Coast Guard decided this isn't a good fit.
Right. And I don't want to overly assume but details, but it's safe to assume any branch you're in for only 2 weeks and get kicked out within 2 weeks, it's something of significance happened.
Yeah.
If it's not if it's not like a medical thing, right?
They
Like
talk to each other.
No.
They didn't.
No.
Yeah.
That's how this happens. And I don't know if they ever fixed it, but this psychologist told me about this, that they don't talk. And so you can go, it's some civil liberties thing, I'm sure, but you can go to another branch and get in and
which is crazy.
It's insane.
If you think about it.
Yeah.
If you're not good enough for the Coast Guard,
let's train you. Let's train you to kill people.
I always can't finish that joke.
Yeah. But I'll tell you what,
It's almost like you want to get kicked out.
I will say this as a SWIC that didn't see real worlds, that like I did a lot of training and stuff. Coast Guard guys do real world stuff
for sure
all the time.
Yeah, and we said that before. They're drug addiction. They do some really cool stuff. But they will always be the butt of jokes in the military, even though they're not even part of the military anymore.
Well, it depends. If they're at war, they'll get the Department of Defense will take them up, but they're in Homeland Security most of the time.
So Billy has a troubled past.
Yes,
I mean he just has a troubled past, right. and goes
joins the military, gets back into the Navy at 22 years old,
right,
with a young child.
What year roughly?
That would have been 93,
okay.
Right, 1993, and he goes to Buds in 94, and he gets teamed up because of his height. He gets teamed up with a kid named Dustin Turner, who's kind of the all-American kid, Bloomington, Indiana, 6'3", blonde, handsome, blue eye, and just on top of the world going through.
And when you say because of his height, just so people understand, but boat teams we
carry the boats on our heads,
right?
so if I'm practically I'm practically bald from carrying because all the weight went on my head.
We can try to get guys
right. Yeah. So you put them on the opposite side of the boat, and so there was a couple guys taller than them, but they didn't make it through. They were the tallest to make it through their Buds class. I think their Buds class had over 100 people, and 19 guys made it through. Okay. Those two made it through when they got rolled back together, which was part of it. Rollback is in Buds when you get injured or whatever. But since they made it through Hell Week, they got to go to the next class. They didn't have to go. So they hung out for about 4 months, and Brown taught Turner how to lift weights and how to work out, and they became very close friends.
But and then in contrast to Billy's background, tell us about Dusty's.
Dusty was
So for those that don't know, when they say that they went through Bud's class, that is basic underwater demolition, and it's for the SEAL team. So it's basic underwater demolition SEAL. So I wanted everybody to know what that actually meant.
A Boy Scout. It's rumored that he was an Eagle Scout, but I'm not sure that's true. But it had been in his church. He people loved him. He was an athlete in school. Billy, all he did was taekwondo and hand-to-hand stuff. He didn't play any sports. Dusty could play basketball, volleyball. He joined the military at 17. All of his family had been in the military. He went on an early enlistment without his mother even knowing about it, and then he went off and went into Buds. And so when he graduated Buds, he was the youngest SEAL trained.
JV team for life.
I really need to get premium so it won't do this. So I'm going to skip ahead of some of these ads here just because I don't see a point in listening to them.
Life everywhere he's gone as a young adult up until when they meet in the SEAL teams or in training. Mm-hmm. And then by contrast, Dusty's just your all-American kid. I believe even described that he was so active in his church. He was a junior deacon, in his church, and he was no problems at all. Joins at 17, just your all-American.
And why
kid.
they paired him together? I mean, instructors have told me that Brown needed somebody to look after him, and Turner was the perfect person.
Man, that's kind of almost like that. It's odd reference, but it's true. Tim Tebow and
Hernandez
and Aaron Hernandez, and they paired them up because Aaron Hernandez was a troubled kid, right? But very similar backgrounds, and that's one of the reasons Aaron Hernandez didn't have a whole lot of troubles in Florida because he had Tim Tebow, watching over him.
Good point.
But so they get paired up. They get through after they get rolled back and they get put back in together. What's really just I don't want to put him on a pedestal, Billy, about this, but it's crazy. he has an immense drinking problem, and he has this drinking problem during SEAL training. So he's, on the weekends and some nights, he's putting down a handle. He's putting down 12 packs.
Man, if you can do SEAL training and do that,
240-ounce malt liquors every night, depending on what. But if you don't have to get up early in the morning, he's, like you said, he says on the stand, which I got to film. It took him a long time, but he got to where he could drink a fifth of 151 and a case of beer in a 24-hour period, while he's doing 3 times the steroids recommendations and never cycling off.
That amount of alcohol is seriously concerning. And they get into it here in a minute, and they say that he wasn't even supposed to be drinking because the military knew he had this issue and he wasn't supposed to be drinking. But him drinking is what led, in my opinion, to this crime that was committed. And he ends up drinking a lot. The night this crime is committed, he drank 2 bourbons, he drank 2 Jack and Cokes, and had 2 beers. He did that 4 times. So he had, in all, that night of the incident, he had 8 bourbons, 8 Jack and Cokes, and 8 beers in a couple hour period. He was seriously inebriated when this happened. I don't know. We'll have to look into that. All right, here we go.
Feel hungover listening to that. I mean, that is amazing.
Impressive, really bad, but impressive.
It is impressive.
Right.
What he was doing was getting up and training. Anybody that's gone, you're doing a ruck march.
Yeah, I don't understand how you do that.
But Brent, you have 6 beers. What are you doing the next day?
Not much. Not much. And even then, I wasn't much of a drinker at all during the Q course. When I was going through that, but I just wasn't in general. But also, for that same reason, like you're going through like the toughest physical training your country can ask of you in that branch, and to do it hungover or not to do it at 100%. Gosh, that's one.
And he made it through. And I think a lot of this stuff is about the instructors. Why it was so hard to make, because the guys that I knew personally, some of them helped train this guy, and they don't want to talk about.
They have to know. They have to. Know. They may not know the extent of it, because students can hide it, but at that rate, like you have to be able to smell it on the kid's breath,
right?
And you have to. It's got to be oozing out of his pores.
He had been had the cadre talk to him many times about the drinking. He wasn't allowed to be drinking the night that this crime happened. Really? He wasn't allowed to be drinking, but he was 3 sheets.
Yeah,
and
so they make it through SEAL training. They both get assigned to the same team
SEAL Team 4
on the East Coast out of
Norfolk.
Yeah. And this, generally speaking, this is where things go wrong.
Yes, it was mounting up to this,
right? Yeah,
right. It was just this thing that he was drinking so much,
and he loved to fight when he was drunk too.
Fight. Yeah,
he's always a bad combo.
Yeah, he basically couldn't not fight when he was drunk. Like he had to find somebody to fight or have sex with. That's what he says on the stand, right? Like that's all he's going to do,
right?
And
that's why I said this is, in my opinion, what led to this crime being committed is, he said it on the stand. He either wanted to fight somebody or he wanted to have relations when he was drunk, and he was definitely 3 sheets to the wind. I think that's putting it very mildly when this crime happened. I don't know. You guys tell me, because I think that's an awful lot of alcohol to have in your system.
He was involved in group sex incidents in Mexico and all of, things that I've found out since. I get calls all the time from people like the Pizza Hut manager that he worked for that Billy beat the crap out of him, and like close to death, where he's begging God for it to be over. He says first he's begging Billy to stop, and then he's not stopping. He's just tuning him up. He's on the ground, and he starts begging God for it to be over.
You get an angry 6'4", 220-pound ripped guy who loves to fight and can fight and doesn't have the control because of alcohol. That's a scary person to be around.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that comes in. I think that comes into play later. Like I really do. Well, I don't think
And one thing to add on top of what he said about he likes to fight and he can fight, he is trained by our United States military to fight and to kill. And he is way more, in my opinion, than 3 sheets to the wind the night that this crime happened.
or
Yeah.
what I'm talking about on
Right.
that. Well, I think that it's good to paint this picture completely, because without understanding who the two people really are, it's hard to understand some of the actions later.
Right. And Dustin Turner's no saint. He likes girls and is an attractive kid with about to put a trident on. And
Elon Musk just made
so the night, you want me to go into the
Yeah,
night
so
of?
they're there at the bayou. They end up going to the bayou,
Yeah.
and which was a bar there in
Right.
in Virginia Beach. So yeah, let's go ahead and pick it up there. It's a weekend. They have the weekend off.
Right.
Are they out of training now?
They're in what's called SEAL tactical training, and now it's called SEAL qualification training. But you basically do 6 months afterwards with your team, and they evaluate you in the cadre, and they're looking at Brown like, because in Puerto Rico he'd done this fifth of 151 and a case of beer in a 24-hour period, and went on a rampage and was not allowed to be drinking, but good luck trying to stop him from drinking. And they go to the bayou on a Sunday evening, and there's a tourist named Jennifer Evans who's visiting her best friend, her roommate from Emory University. And Jennifer sees Dusty walk in and goes over and introduces herself to him, because and they hit it off. Brown is already drunk and goes, and according to the bartender and people all around him, orders a 6-drink round. It's 2 shots of bourbon, 2 rum and cokes, and 2 beers. And
That's one round.
That's
For how
one
many
round.
people?
That's what he's drinking as a round, and he goes back and he did at least 4 rounds of it. So
That's just
and
unbelievable.
I don't know how it is where y'all are at, but if I were to go to a bar and order that one time, chances are I'm getting cut off after that. Like, so for the bartender to serve him, and maybe that bartender to give them, play devil's advocate and give him benefit of the doubt, he was with other people. So the bartender may not have realized that was all for him. But you can't tell me that this man being 3 sheets to the wind, this bartender couldn't tell. So why he wasn't cut off, meaning he wasn't served anymore, I'm not sure. But the fact that he wasn't supposed to be drinking at all, and the fact that he had that much alcohol in his system, again, I think lends to why this crime happened.
So Turner arranges, she's there with her friends who are from Virginia Beach, and they want to go. And she's,
She's having a good time.
She's having a good time. She tells them, go ahead, come back at 2:00 and pick me up. They leave at 1:00. Turner goes to find Brown a ride home. And and there's a SEAL there that they've seen around the command, and he asks him to take him home. And he says, no, I'm going across the street to the all-night place. So he finds a girl that used to date Brown and arranges for her to take him home back to the barracks.
Okay.
And they go out to the car. They were going to go down to the beach, but it's 1:30 in the morning. Her friends are going to be back at 2. So they're just in the car. Turner says that they never even kissed.
Now, that's not to interrupt you, but
Right.
I think it's a very important part. And one of the girls that Jennifer was there with was a military brat, very, very familiar with the SEAL community.
Yes, Andrea.
And she questions his SEALhood, if you will.
Right.
And Dustin pulls out his ID,
Yes.
does he not?
Yes.
To show that, hey,
His address on his driver's license is SEAL Team 4.
and I say that because that's a point I want to make later. So he pulls out his ID and shows it to her as to say, no, I'm really a SEAL before they
Yes.
end up getting in the car.
Exactly.
And so, yeah.
So one of the crimes that they're charged with, which is the abduction or the kidnapping, if that was your true intent, if that was really Dustin's true intent, he would not have shown her his license stating that he's at the barracks and all of this. Like, he wouldn't have done that. That's crime 101. You're not gonna, if I'm gonna go murder somebody, I'm not going to, well, here's my license and here's all my information, and show it to the other people that are there, and then go commit the crime against the person who is their friend. Like, that makes no sense if you think about it in this manner.
A perfect tactic if you're planning on abducting someone.
Don't get me started this early. Don't get me started this early.
So I get flippant about it just because it's I don't think a good investigator would come to the conclusions that they came to. But anyway, they go out to the car. Brown gets in an argument with the girl that's supposed to take him home. All right.
Imagine that.
Yeah, right. So he wanders out, imagine the two of them sitting in the car listening to music and looking up and seeing this monster stumbling towards your car. And she lets him in behind her in the back seat. Now, obviously, everything I'm saying is what Dustin Turner has said and what Billy eventually says happened.
Right.
Of course, the physical evidence in the car supports all of this too.
And it's pretty important to mention the car itself, because this will come into play.
1990 Geostorm with seats that only go forward; they do not go back.
Right. Geostorm.
Tiny.
Two 6'4" Navy SEALs and a little
Right.
girl. And it's a two-door car.
Right.
It's a Geo. I don't think we have to say a whole lot more.
Exactly.
It's not a big car.
Yeah, she lets him in the back seat, and you can imagine where he would be with her, and she's petrified, just because she's seen the other guy with a pager. Right back then, we had pagers. Not everybody's carrying around cell phones, and so he, of course, starts. You ever fucked a frog man and all that stuff, and she's scared to death. And Dustin said that he was trying to put the CD in and calm Billy down, and so try to get him the ride. And where are the girls? Are they going to show up so I can, get her away from?
Yeah.
So let me see if I can add this here to the stage so you guys can see, in case you're not familiar with this vehicle. Oh, says invalid image type. Hold on. Let me do this a different way. Hold on. I don't know what I'm doing. Hold on. So, maybe. Minimize that. Stop that. Share this picture. Okay. So this, hold on. This is a Geostorm. This is a 1990 Geostorm. It's a little two-door car. As you can see, there's not a whole lot of room. And you've got a 6'3" and 6'4" person in the driver's seat and in the back seat. And in the front, you've got Jennifer. In the passenger, you've got Jennifer Evans. So this is not a large car. This is not a car that you have a whole lot of room. Like you said, the seats in this car, they will fold forwards, but they won't lean back. Okay? And that's important in a couple of reasons, and they go into it. But I just wanted you guys to see what that car looked like.
And he says he feels the whole car just shake, and he looks over, and Brown's got her from just like that, attacked from behind, probably an armbar or what, we don't know. But Turner goes, grabs his arms, pulling him off of her. She doesn't scream. She dies. She urinates the seat instantly. And
Is the car in motion or is it parked?
No, it's parked. They're sitting there waiting for her friends to show back up. So,
because her friends, just make sure everyone's tracking the story. Jennifer, make sure I have all the names right. Jennifer Evans came with three friends. I'm sorry, a group of three. Came with two friends. They wanted to leave. They wanted to leave earlier, which he said, but they wanted to leave earlier. She didn't want to leave. And if I remember right, they said, "Okay, we'll come back and get you when the bar closes."
We'll go get coffee.
We'll go get coffee and come back and get her.
Okay.
So they're essentially waiting in the car for her friends to show back up to pass her back off to her friends, which was
with police cars.
Granger knows that if you're a school custodian, cleanliness is your top priority. That's why you can rely on Granger for a range of cleaning products and equipment, from disinfectants to floor scrubbers. Granger, for the ones who get it done.
It's going to be at 2:00. This club probably holds 300, 400 people. It's a dance club.
Did they say in the autopsy what killed her? Did he just break her neck?
Yeah, there was a big deal about that, where because her body was decomposed and her neck wasn't broken, but depending on who they didn't really know, right? Could it have, I mean, what the forensic or whoever, I think her name was Lowe, she says, yes, it could have happened in seconds, or it could have taken minutes.
So he said a while ago, sorry, I didn't catch that ad because I was doing something. He said that Billy Joe Brown, who was in the back seat, he was fighting against Billy to let Jennifer go. If his intent was to unalive her, if Dustin's intent was to unalive her, he would not be fighting against Billy Brown to let her go. And I think that's important to note, considering what he was charged with and convicted of. And they'll get into that here in a minute, but I just wanted to point that out. He was trying to save her.
Right. So this all comes out in the.
Did she reject him? Or was he
yes,
just,
I think so.
You want to fuck
Yeah,
fuck me?
right. And he
no.
touches her hair and she smacks his hand, and that's when he
Sends him into a
attacks.
rage.
Yeah.
You know who I am is a constant with Billy Brown.
Okay.
You know, he did it with a female polygraph woman. 3 questions in, he's like, "I'm not talking to you. You know who I am."
Yeah. So what happens? Does Dustin know she's dead right away?
Yeah, he's fighting with Brown, but he's pretty. And Brown's screaming, "Drive, drive, drive!" And of course, the thing that he does that changes his whole life, changes everybody's life, is he drives.
And that is where Dusty made a mistake. He drove off with an unalived Jennifer Evans in the front passenger seat. But they even say it here in a minute. You are conditioned when it is a dive partner or in the military, you are conditioned to not ask questions, essentially, to just go. When you're told to do something, you just do it. And again, Dusty's not innocent in this whole ordeal, but he's also not fully guilty of, in my opinion, of what they charged him with either.
That's what I find fascinating about shoot, move, and communicate. Right? Like I don't know anybody. I don't know a boat guy. I don't know anybody that wouldn't evaluate that situation and go, "Oh, I'm going to go run to the police." Right?
It's definitely it's.
Or do you think the hardwiring had already started?
Yes.
Where he just heard a
Yes.
seal go, and he just went in.
Yes.
I hate to say it, that it really is. It's one of those things. You have an all-American kid who's never really been in trouble. He gets thrown into this brotherhood. Everything. I wasn't a SEAL, but I was on a dive team, and the
Same thing.
the amount of that just gets drilled into you of being with your dive buddy. Everything is between you and your dive buddy. Just the brotherhood. I think holistically, when I look back at this, a lot of people will say what they would have done, but you've been in this brainwash of training that says it's you and your swim buddy, and nothing else matters. He's never been in trouble. He's never even thought about this situation. He's seen what this 6'4", 220-pound guy can do. I don't know if anyone else would have been like, you know what, I'm going to fight you too. Or if it's one of those things. Okay, drive. All right, I'm gonna drive and figure this out. And then you just never really figure it out, and you're in a place that you didn't expect to be.
And he almost passes out immediately, and now you're the guy with this situation to deal with.
Right, and this is why I say
Billy is passed out from drinking, these rounds of drinks. He just passes out. He's basically in a blackout when this whole thing happens. He doesn't really remember much of it. It's part of the problem, is because he remembers it by what Dusty has said.
Where'd they go?
Went to Newport News Park, which is about 40 miles away, on the way to AP Hill, where they had to be the following day. And they carried the body. Turner goes around to the passenger side, gets her out. Brown gets out from the back seat, and they carry her into the woods.
And that is the crime that Dusty committed in this whole ordeal, is he helped dispose of Jennifer's body. He was an accessory after the fact. He didn't do the crime, but he was an accessory after the fact, which, in my opinion, is what he should have been charged with, but wasn't. Which is why I say Dusty is not innocent in all of this. because he was an accessory after the fact. He didn't do the unaliving, but he did help dispose of Jennifer's body. Now, they get into it here in just a second. He tried to, in his own way, not necessarily undo this crime, but he tried to rat out Billy Brown without ratting out Billy Brown, because you don't rat out your buddy in the military. You just don't do it. You stick together. It's drilled into you. And they go into that here in just a second.
And hide her in the woods.
Okay, so now he's accomplice.
Yeah,
Now he's
now
accomplice.
he's
And
you know,
That's about where I stopped watching it.
right.
The
That's
first
naturally
time.
your
right. Yeah.
And so
it's something to do
we
with
made
it,
no
you know.
bones about it at the beginning.
Right.
This guy is not innocent. He's not innocent. He's an accomplice.
Mhm.
But if that was all, if that's where the story ended, you'd be like, well, that's what you get. But this is why you're here.
Yeah, right.
That's not where the story.
Right.
That's not where the story
Yeah,
ends. In a
right,
weird
right.
way, and this is where the story begins.
Exactly.
In one aspect.
Yep.
Yes,
So-
because it's the why. It's
right.
the why would you drive away? What happened? Even to this day, Turner will say, well, he's a different guy when he's drunk. He was drunk. He didn't mean to do this. Yeah, and he does hate Brown because of what he did to his family more than he's an amazing person in prison. And we'll get to that. But you get to know a lot about him because of what he's.
I really, really, really hate ads. Just saying.
He's been in prison 30 years, and unless some governor comes along and grants parole, there's not much hope for him.
Yeah. And if we're talking about this, I'll go ahead and set the stage a little bit, which is a little bit mind-boggling. But this is the law. So he's an accomplice. You want to know? He's been in jail for 30 years now.
Yeah.
You want to know what the sentence is for being an accomplice to murder?
Accessory after the
An accessory after the fact,
Yeah.
which is what he is.
Yeah.
You want to guess what the sentence is for that?
Max? 15.
12 months. Accessory after the fact, 12 months.
Holy
That is-
crap.
That is what he is. And right, wrong, or indifferent, that is what he
Yeah.
is. And we'll go into a little bit more of how he makes up for this. But that's what he is. He's an accomplice after the fact. You did that crime. You should do that time. 12 months. He's been in prison for 30 years. But stick around, and we're going to tell you how this happens. And like I said, this is kind of where the story begins. Oddly enough. So I guess pick it up where eventually Virginia Beach PD come visit him at training.
So they go back to AP Hill on the drive out that morning. Brown says to Turner, well, what I did was stupid, but we're in it together now. You're in it. And Turner's trying to get him to go to the police. But, it wasn't a hard case to solve. You just talk to the people in the bar, the bartenders, and Turner left with the drawing of Dusty Turner by her friends shows up in the newspaper on Tuesday. And Kristen, the girl that was supposed to take Turner home, calls the police, Crime Stoppers, gets a $25,000, whatever that's called, and says that's Dusty Turner, and he's a SEAL at SEAL Team 4. So the AP Hill is up north of Richmond.
So that's where it's important he showed his ID to the friends. Therefore, they were able to identify him and where he was and who he was very quickly. Which, if you're going to commit a crime, if it's your intent to commit a crime, that would have been a very stupid move, right?
And so the Virginia Beach police called the FBI office there in Richmond and said, hey, I can't imagine there's any connection, but you need to just clear these guys off here, get them off the, we'll figure out. She's probably alive somewhere. She's met somebody, and and it doesn't make any sense. And they go out and they talk to Turner, and I think Turner at this point, he's already had an AD on his weapon. He's wandering around like a zombie trying to figure out he's called his mother like 10 times on that Monday, right? Like, and he calls once a week normally, but he's in this state of what do I do? And he goes and he says that he was with her, and rather than say, he does say we left her in the bar. he says, I've got her phone number on a napkin. And he goes and gets the napkin. Very odd behavior for somebody that's trying to get away with something.
Right.
Put yourself there. And then he says, I'll take a polygraph.
Hey, wait, I need you to show.
The FBI calls back and says, it's not him. There's nothing there. But then they had questioned Billy Brown, and Billy Brown said that he hadn't been drinking. And the Virginia Beach police knew that he was drunk. This could be, right? That he was falling down drunk.
Right.
But so they go back and they take
nothing to lie about.
Yes.
Yeah. Right.
Yes. And because he wasn't allowed to be drinking, and they take him to the FBI office, and Brown, after a couple questions, like I said, that it was female, Sandy Baum was the cop that gave them and he's like, no, I'm not talking to you. Turner does the full thing, and they come back in and say, look, you're obviously lying about this, this, and this. You were there. Brown did it. Tell us what happened.
So you guys tell me, if you committed, your intent was to commit this crime and get away with it, are you then going to be blowing your mom's phone up? Are you going to be asking for your superior officer? Are you going to be asking to take a polygraph test? Are you going to be putting yourself willingly at the scene of the crime? Most of you would probably say no. Why? Because that'd be stupid. But that's what Dusty did. And it comes very apparent here in just a second why. You guys tell me, would you have done that if you were truly innocent and wanting to keep your mouth shut? Would you have done that? I wouldn't have.
He says, let me talk to my warrant officer. And they're in the FBI office. And somehow there's no recordings of any of this, right? There's no
no audio recordings of this conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
So his warrant officer comes in, his training officer, that he's been lying to about this, because he's always been like, did Billy do this? Right. What's going on here?
Yeah.
And he says, I'll tell you what happened. Tells his boss what happened. Of course, he's mad at him, but he also kind of understands what happened. He leaves, and we never know who the jag that he called, or if there was a jag that got him. But he comes back in and says, just tell him what you know. You don't need a lawyer because this happened out in town. We can't help you. Doesn't, as a chief with people that work under me, I know that.
That was bad advice. Just say it. For the officer to tell him, well, just tell him what happened. Be honest, is really bad advice. He should have said, keep your mouth shut. Let's get an attorney. You need an attorney. Don't talk without one. But that's not what he told him. He told him to tell the truth. And he now has a superior officer telling him to tell the truth. So he's no longer protecting his buddy. He's following a direct order. And if you have any experience whatsoever with the military, you know you don't go against a direct order.
But that's not
Right.
You would never allow.
Yeah.
So they do. They come back in, and he tells them the whole story, and he goes to Newport News Park with this Detective Orr. Detective Byram goes into Brown and says, here's the drawing of where the body is. And he says he looked at that in New Turner's drawings, because you do a lot of, land nav and stuff. He knew that he'd ratted on him. And he said, I didn't do it. He did.
Right.
Basically changes positions with, that we see it a lot, but projecting, right? Like,
Right. In Brown's mind, it's, I would say it's safe to say, but the spoiler alert, Brown comes up later. So we do know this,
Yes.
but even without this, it's a safe assumption. Like, you ratted on him. You turned on the Brotherhood. We made this pact that we were in it together. I'm holding up my end of the bargain. Like, I'm not saying anything.
I brought you into that.
That's right. Yeah.
And years later, he says to me on the phone, if he wants to talk, let him do the time. Right. If you're going to talk,
That's right.
let's see.
Right. So you want me to fall for this? Now we're all going down.
Exactly.
Essentially.
Yeah.
And if we're just being, you don't have to be a psychologist to understand this. And again, it's why the background is so important. bad guys do bad things and good guys do good things. Generally speaking, doesn't mean, but generally
Absolutely.
speaking, that's what happens.
If you're looking for somebody involved in a crime, you look at the people that have done that sort of crime first, right? Like,
right. He has a history of this.
Yes.
He has a history of violence.
Yes.
Yeah. He has a history of hurting women.
Yes.
And one has no history of anything. In fact, you already said it. He can't even live with himself. He's calling his mom over and over and over. He can't live with himself. He's the one who cracks and says, "Hey, this is what."
And he set himself up for it. The way I always look at it is he's kind of, by volunteering for a polygraph, this is behavior of somebody that's trying to get this off his chest, but in a way that he isn't the betrayer. He's not, I failed the polygraph. I did this, but I didn't break the code, because he's still always thinking, I still want to be a SEAL. And
Right.
and if this gets exposed, and this is his way to do that.
And which is, and to tie all this in, it's kind of when he admits to his warrant officer, like, what should I do? And his warrant officer's like, you should tell him the truth. He said it was a lot easier for me because instead of rolling over on my brother, now I'm following an order from a superior.
Absolutely.
And it kind of helped him as someone who always wants to do the right thing. Well, now I have to. I've been ordered to do this.
And I always put myself in Warrant Officer O'Connick's place as the chief in charge. It would have been so much better if he just said, we're going to take these guys back to the command, and we're going to sit down with people he respects and get to the bottom of this, instead of
New barrier restore.
freeing, you're freeing them to the Reed technique and all that, of
Right,
turning
yeah.
people against each other, doing what the police are going to do.
Yeah.
And we'll get both of them because they'll blame each other.
But part of the problem is Brown starts singing, but lies are always hard. Now
Right.
he's making things up on the spot.
Right.
Let's talk about
Yeah.
his confessions.
Yeah, none of his,
confessions.
because he first says, look, I just held her down in between the chairs, seats in a geostorm. She's a small girl, but you don't fit between. I do a bit in the film where I hired somebody to try to make this work with animation, and you can't get her in between the seats and him to hold her legs back, and her head's supposed to be in the back seat. And he always says she was in the back seat. There's no forensic evidence of her ever being in the back seat, just the front seat. There's all of his stories. And he says, I leaned the seat back and held her across while Turner choked her. The seats don't go back.
So that boggles my mind as far as the investigation goes, because you've got DNA and forensic evidence that goes directly against what Billy Brown is saying happened. And then not just that, but he says, well, the seats go back. Well, they don't go back. So how did this investigation get so, in my opinion, off the rails, right? They are determined to get these guys, both of them, for this, that they ignore the evidence. They have tunnel vision. They don't follow the evidence, which boggles my mind.
In a geostorm.
And to dive down the DNA evidence, I believe he described her as frothing out the mouth and bleeding as well.
In the back seat.
There should be DNA evidence of this. There's no DNA evidence. So even though, so this becomes the problem, but I feel like anyone could have picked this apart. You have three people that know the truth for a small amount of time.
Right.
Right. Dusty, Billy, and Jennifer. Well, Jennifer's dead, so she can't talk. So now it's basically two guys' words against each other. But DNA evidence is completely backing up one story, and the other story of she's in the back seat, she's bleeding, froth in the mouth, even just the positioning of the body. If you take DNA evidence out of it, just the way the bodies would be positioned in the car is physically impossible. Should be a softball, but the story continues.
Right. So when you have a year of this being the biggest story in Virginia Beach history. It's a year.
Did he change his story
yes,
as well
yes,
a couple times? So it's one thing to stay by one lie.
Very good. Yeah. So first it's I don't know anything about it. Then it's like, oh, I just held her legs down and he killed her. And then he waits a half hour. They come back in and he's like, that story there, I just said that because I was trying to take some of the heat off of Dusty. How that takes heat off of Dusty, I don't know. But really, she was dead when I got to the car. She's still in the back seat.
Right.
But she was already dead. But then I got in the car and started molesting her body.
Why? Even
because of DNA, because he thought that, Turner had told him, don't touch her, stop touching her.
Yeah.
The police will, they'll know.
Yeah.
And the I mean, this guy, Billy Brown, admits to molesting the dead body. So there's a level of, just subhuman.
Yeah.
And so he had a lot to hide that he didn't want to admit to. And Turner's trying to protect his swim buddy. And then when he finally figures out a way to get out of this, and when he saw Jennifer's parents, especially her mother, on the news saying, "Please, if you know where she is," when he saw all this stuff, and he's sitting and watching the news and knowing that he knows, and it thinks of his own mother and what it's still upsets me. He couldn't take it.
Right.
It was,
Which just goes back over and over, to who they are. And again, it's the reason why you have character witnesses and things like this matter. The guy, there's nothing about him and about his story. His story never changes. DNA evidence backs up his story, and everything from his childhood to even what happens now reflects a guy that's just not capable of this.
Yeah.
He's not capable of it.
Exactly. You wonder how good of a SEAL he would have been just if he'd had to do 8 deployments like Eddie Gallagher.
Oh, for sure.
Right.
And Billy Joe Brown would have been kicked out of the SEAL community within the year with his drinking problems.
Yes.
It's just
right.
One would have had a great SEAL career,
Yes.
and it's what the SEALs are looking
Exactly.
for. And the other guy slipped through the cracks and would have been caught within a year. No doubt in my mind.
Right. I actually, the psychologist that I talked to about psychopaths getting into the SEAL teams, and he's like, "Oh, we can't have it because a true psychopath, this always happens.
Right.
This always happens. So inside of a SEAL team, it's a bomb that's going to go off."
Yeah.
And so we have a year of it. This is a year after the O.J. Simpson trial. We've got cameras in courtrooms for the first time in history. And we have Brown's judge says, no cameras in my courtroom. So Brown goes through this whole thing. And at this point, he's saying she's dead when I got to the car. His lawyer saying Turner's the one that was seen with her. So you have all this press. It was on Current Affair, was in Details magazine. It was just all this publicity that Brown takes the stand. Well, first you have one of the detectives take the stand and said, when Brown's, this is how I read Brown's transcripts and knew that they knew, because Detective Byram takes the stand and says, and reads off Brown's confession. She was here, the first one, right? Not and I held her down, and Brown's lawyer gets him under cross and says, "How do these seats configure? How is this that this happened?" Where he says he lays the seat back, and Byram, the second detective, he's not lead detective, says, "I don't know. I've never looked at the car."
Wow.
JV team for life.
How do you investigate a crime but never look at where the crime happened? That is something I don't understand. So more blah blah.
Give me anything. I got the one because it had been entered into evidence, so they couldn't stop me from getting it.
Okay.
And at the end of it, he's saying, she was dead when I got to the car, and then Officer Byram gets up and says, "Can I get you anything?" And he says, "A beer and a babe."
You want to talk about someone's just not mentally there?
Yeah.
You're on the verge of getting murder charges slapped on you. The officer says, "Can I get you anything? A beer and a babe."
What would you call that type of behavior? Like a
Just
psychopathic?
completely.
Yes, a psychopath. I
Yeah,
would say.
just
Like you think he thought he was gonna get away with it, or just didn't care?
I think, and we've not to this extent, but we've covered people who think they're too big to fail, too popular to be in trouble. I think in his mind, he will outsmart this, and he will manipulate it to his favor, and he'll get away with it.
He wrote a letter.
So he's not worried about anything.
He wrote a letter when he was about 3-4 before he found God. He wrote a letter to the President of the United States saying that he and Turner should be sent as secret agents to, CIA type operators, that they would be perfect to do. So
He's still not living.
this is
Yeah,
right.
he's just
Right.
not
So Brown definitely thinks he's better than everybody, and definitely has this bigger than life feelings of grandeur. He can do no wrong type mentality, where you've got Dustin, who can't live with what happened. It blows my mind how the cops screwed this up so bad. But the cops weren't the only ones who screwed this up. The prosecution, and they go into it here in a minute, but the prosecution seriously screwed this up, in my opinion, as well. And we'll get to that when they talk about it. Take your time, Marie, and Hopefully it fixes itself. All right, Kelly. Take your time. All right, so I'm going to play some more. Here we go.
So, yeah. It's just like, okay, you've completely lost your mind if you think that that's what's.
Yeah. It's. I think it's important to note, and like I said, I'm so glad you're here. I wouldn't want to cover this without you because I mean, you did the movie on it. You lived it.
Yeah.
When Billy Brown goes to trial, and the charges are essential. This is where it all goes wrong of sorts. They decided that it's not just murder charges, because that's one thing. They decided to slap them both with murder and both with abduction, which the abduction part of it just continues to play a bad role and continue to bite Dustin in the ass. But that's the charges that they both face. They're facing them separate right now. Billy first and Dustin's trial later.
So when they charge them, because Billy has admitted to defiling the dead body, they charge them with both of them with abduction with intent to defile.
Okay.
That they went to someplace else and intended to defile her body. Then it shows with an inanimate object, right? Billy's hand, right? That's what they charge him with. Then they drop that charge against Turner, but it shows up in the soundings, a Navy paper, as abduction with intent to defile with an inanimate object. Just in the paper, it just shows up inaccurate. So now not only do you have this abduction that never happened, that they didn't go anywhere, but that they had her out in the woods doing stuff to, this is what it just went across Virginia Beach like a wildfire about how horrible these guys were. And it was in the paper all the time. And that charge was dropped against Dusty. And if they abducted her, where did they take her?
And I believe what's really important about the abduction charge is, regardless of how she was killed, whether it was premeditated or not, because the abduction charge is tied to it, you get first degree murder.
Felony murder. You have an underlying felony, which is abduction.
Right. And they're really.
So you guys tell me, do you feel like the abduction charge was warranted? Because in my opinion, it's not. She went out to the car inside the bar parking lot, right? And on her own free will. And that's where she was unalived by Billy Brown. So I'm not sure. I mean, I get how I say this. I understand they're trying to make the murder charge a higher charge, right? So if you have an underlying felony, the kidnapping, the abduction, then it makes that charge worse. It basically gives it more time. What do you guys feel about the abduction part? Not just the unaliving, but the abduction charge itself.
Is no accomplice to murder after that as well, because once it's part of an abduction, it's first degree murder or nothing. Yeah, essentially.
Exactly.
Is that how I understand?
Yes, and the abduction is the key to the whole thing. If they want to get Turner, they've got to say she was abducted. So they'll lean on. They'll sometimes say, well, even if they killed her in the parking lot, if she died a foot outside of that parking lot, it was
during the abduction.
Right. Then she was abducted. Again, none of it makes any sense. If Dusty were involved in what they're saying, do you think he would have?
Yeah, let's go over that real quick, because abduction and heck, we can even fast forward to what happens to Billy Brown, because I don't think it's any surprise. Billy Brown gets charged with first degree murder as he should, and he gets 75 years in prison. But the abduction, and this again is what goes back to the abduction. It's so important. Anyway, so the abduction doesn't really matter in a weird way to him. But as we transfer over to Dusty, the abduction means everything. And how do you prove that you're going to abduct someone when you show them your driver's license? That's a horrible plan for abduction, is to show her friends your ID and your driver's license. It's a horrible plan to have to say, hey, link back up with me in the parking lot at 2 a.m. If you guys want to go, I'll make sure she links up with you at 2 a.m. So they have a plan, and her friends corroborated this. They have a plan to link back up. So how can you prove that they had a plan to abduct when the plan was to meet back up in the parking lot at 2 a.m. when the bar closes?
And you're in a bar where people know you. One of your accomplices drinks himself so he can't stand up, and you're in a 1990 geostorm. It's just, I don't know anybody that would make a plan like that, but 2 Navy SEALs.
Right. Let's take let's take that into consideration as well. Like you have guys for the last 2 years of their life trained to make plans and execute plans that worked. You know, if these guys,
your ass shoot out if you don't do it right.
If these guys wanted to abduct someone, sure, you can say Billy Brown was so messed up, he's drunk and he'll make a bad plan, but you can't say that about Dusty. So it's really, you would think when you're watching this, it's starting to kind of unfold. Like, okay, this is where it just gets crazy. Billy Brown gets 75 years as he should. When they transferred over to Dustin's, and they had to, because they were together, and this was their plan to charge them both. Now you also have to make these same charges stick to Dusty.
And you would think that it's illegal to try cases with 2 separate stories, but they kind of do. In Dusty's case, they're like, well, it doesn't really matter if Brown killed her. In Brown's trial, they're accepting that Dusty killed her and you held her down. We're taking that story and saying, but you're still, we'll run with that.
Okay.
But now in Dusty's trial, they're kind of saying, well, it doesn't really matter because they abducted her and that's a felony murder.
How did they get around the DNA evidence when they're like, okay, well, if you killed her or if that's the story is that, according to, we have to believe one story or the other. One story places her in the back seat. Your story places her in the front seat. There's plenty of DNA evidence that she was in the front seat. No DNA evidence that she was in the back seat. At the end of the day, they have to prove what happened. How does that get lost?
In the Commonwealth of Virginia, the law is the prosecutors determine what is exculpatory evidence.
Have you guys ever heard that the prosecutor gets to determine what is exculpatory evidence? Because any trial I've ever heard of, when you file for discovery, everything gets turned over. And okay, Charmaine, see you in a little bit. And so if everything gets turned over during discovery, then how is it that the DA gets to say, well, that might exclude your client, but we don't really care? That doesn't make any sense to me. It feels like some sort of violation. I don't know if it would be a Brady violation or not, but all evidence should have been turned over. Exculpatory or not, especially exculpatory evidence. A prosecutor is, by law, in most places, they have to turn it over. So this bugs me, this next part. You guys let me know if it bugs you as much as it bugs me.
Dick Bridges, Turner's lawyer, says to Linda Summit, they're going to give us all their reports, all the DNA, all the forensics. We don't need to spend any money on that, because he was something else about the money that he made off of this for so little representation. But so they never get their own private forensics done on it. What the state does is they say, we're not going to enter it into evidence. So you don't get it. You don't get the forensic evidence that we've done because we're not going to enter it into evidence.
They assumed incorrectly that it was going to be entered into evidence on the prosecutor side. So the defense didn't waste money on it, only to find out the DNA evidence never came. And once neither side presented it, it wasn't
entered into court.
That blows my mind. That blows my mind.
Wow.
And
probably a lot was learned in that case.
Yes.
What do you guys make of that? Because because the prosecution didn't enter the DNA evidence, it wasn't, even if the prosecution didn't enter it, then the defense should have been able to enter it, but they didn't turn it over to the defense to be able to enter it. That doesn't make any sense to me. If that makes sense to anyone in here or anyone watching this, please explain it to me, because I know in Indiana, if the prosecution has evidence, they have to give all of that evidence, not their work, but all of the evidence to the defense, exculpatory or otherwise. And that wasn't done in this case. The prosecution said, well, we're not going to enter it in court. We're not going to enter it into evidence. We're also not going to turn it over to you so you can enter it because it is exculpatory. And since when does a DA get to determine what is exculpatory evidence? Like, have you guys ever heard of that?
Oh,
Yes.
Well,
the poor family.
Dick Bridges was at the end of his career
he was
as well.
78 years
This
old.
is about, this probably is one of the last cases that he's going to try. And you can, this gets talked a lot about in the documentary, where a lot of people who were watching this and were still on Dusty's side because, they believed in him. Like they're very adamant. Like the prosecution was
jury selection took 4 hours.
Was just better. The prosecution was just better.
Right.
And the defense attorney was just a bump on a log.
Yes. Yeah. It's depressing to read because I read Brown's transcripts and his lawyer did a great job of trying to say it was Turner. With the news coverage, he didn't really even seem to understand what Dusty's case was. That at one time Bridges says he wasn't even there. Like, do you not understand your own? Like he just didn't. He and in his behavior afterwards when he gets they fire him, and we'll get to that.
Okay.
That one quote that he says that where he is as a lawyer when you
correct.
Yeah.
What seems to be, it really does. I mean, what seems to, but outside DNA evidence, that's a problem. There's another problem that they kind of, the judge kind of fumbles, which is they don't let the jurors go out and see the car. Instead, what they have is a mock-up of just the front seats and back seats. Well, it's hard to understand how tight of a space the car is without the roof, the doors, everything keeping you within a confined space. They wheeled in just 2 front seats and a back seat.
Why did the judge explain why?
Yeah, judge was a former Navy captain, asked to be the judge on Turner's case. It wasn't his rotation to be he saw every decision he made in that trial was pro prosecution.
Yeah.
And we've seen trials where judges are clearly biased before. It's not like that is something new. So for a judge to be saying, well, I want this case. I know I'm not the judge that's up, but I want to be the judge on this case. Red flag number 1. But for the prosecution not to let, or the judge not to let the jury see the actual car and to only wheel in the front seats and the back seat. And like they said, it's hard to see and understand how tight of a space this was without letting them see the actual car, without doors and a roof, for them to actually feel how tight this was. There were so many issues in this trial, and I can sit here and Monday morning quarterback this, and no, I'm not a lawyer, no, I'm not a defense attorney, but in my opinion, Dustin Turner was railroaded. Now, we'll get into more of that here in just a little bit, but I just wanted to point out how unfair to me that seems. If you guys have an opinion on as to why they did it that way, please let me know.
No.
Brown's judge was quite good, Bonwell Shockley, a female judge, but that judge, was
we'll talk about. So the decision comes down. We'll fast forward this a little bit. The decision comes down because even when this is over, it's not over. The decision comes down. They find him guilty
Of murder.
Yeah, abduction and murder.
Of abduction and murder. Here's what's crazy. Billy Brown gets 75 years. Correct?
Yeah,
Is that 72? 72. You want to know what Dusty gets?
Life.
82. He gets 10 more years
without parole.
Without parole.
Because they just in 95 they just got rid of parole. That comes back now, but
So add that, and the jurors later, you end up find out they weren't convinced. And let's talk about what the jurors had to deal with, what they revealed later as well.
Yeah, the jury foreman I talked to, we wouldn't do it on camera, but he said that most of the men were thinking 3 to 5. It was in the instructions, which is you're not supposed to have in the instructions during the guilt innocence phase, verdict phase. But it had in an instruction 11, it said you can find him guilty of accessory after the fact, which is punishable with 12 months in jail and a $250 or $2,500 fine. So they, during the verdict phase, knew that he was going to walk out. He'd already done that much time in the county jail.
Okay.
Since when do you tell a jury this is what the person would get if you find them this way? Like, that doesn't make sense to me. Why you would inform the jury of that? That's not their job. Their job is to determine guilt or innocence. And I feel like telling the jury, hey, he'd only get a year if you come back with this. And them saying, well, we don't want him to only get a year. We think he did worse, but we're not convinced he did the actual murder. We're not convinced he did the abduction, but we don't want him just to have a year. You're putting your thumb on the scale of justice, and they did it so much in this case, in my opinion. You guys let me know. Do you think that they put their thumb on the scale of justice? And if you think that that was correct.
And so they were like, no way, we're going to do this. So that was brilliant again that they got that in.
Okay.
Horrible by the defense that it's not in there, and how a judge allowed that to be. It's a bifurcated system. You don't tell them what the sentence is during the verdict phase. So
That was a misstep on the judge.
yes,
Shouldn't have been
yeah,
there.
and the defense to let that through. So they told me that, but there were a couple women in the jury that if they could have given them the death penalty, they would have.
Right.
So they
because of the
But this-
just
would have got rid of
but-
this
but
right
also-
out of the jury.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
right. But like I
Yeah.
said before, the defense gave no pushback on jury selection.
Really?
None. Said it was the easiest jury selection they'd ever had. The prosecution.
took less than a half a day.
The
Like I said, lessons
right,
learned.
right. And on top of a time where the media has run amok with this story, saying a bunch of things that weren't true, which we've covered enough between Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and the rest of it.
Absolutely.
Once the media gets a hold of it, it doesn't matter what's true or not. They will sensationalize the story.
And never
Yes.
back off of what they said. Oh, wait, back then when we said this, that was wrong. They're never going to do that.
Right. So all these jurors are tainted by a sensationalized story, and they can't unhear it. Except you expect your defense attorney to change their minds. What it sounds like what should be happening right now is a hung jury, because it does sound like some people. I don't fault some of the people to say, hey, he deserves more time in this. We've been very clear about this. Dusty's not completely innocent. He shouldn't have drove. He shouldn't have helped with the body. Yes, he came out later because he couldn't deal with it, but he didn't deserve 80 life without parole. I mean, you can call it 80 whatever years. So he didn't deserve life without parole. He didn't do the murder. He did not. In fact, if it wasn't for him coming clean about it, who knows?
Yeah, it's
But-
unlikely they would have solved it. They would have found that body, but how do you connect it to them?
Right. So why wasn't it a hung jury? Because it doesn't seem like those guys at the end of the day, they wanted more than 12 months. Okay. But there's a big difference between 12 months and 80 something years. So they tell you how they came to the conclusion of, okay, well, if it's either life or nothing.
They came out and said they couldn't come to a decision. They needed to know whether the sentence was going to be consecutive or concurrent. He wouldn't answer that. They wanted to know about parole. The judge wouldn't answer that. Said, go in there and make a decision. You got to make a decision. And everybody just went along.
No. So it doesn't end here, as you'd imagine, with being an innocent person. He is wrongly accused I don't think you've talked to him. I'm sure he makes no bones about what he did, but he does,
Right.
and it's rightfully so, what he didn't do. You would think at this point, like, this is why you have an appeal system. This is why you have other things, and a fully due process system. What happened with the appeal?
For procurement,
Strange things happened in the courts. Probably his best chance was a habeas against Bridges for his representation.
As far as the appeal goes, I think definite inassistance of counsel, the judge being biased, prosecution not doing what they're supposed to do by law. I'm not sure what that would be called because I'm not an attorney, but prosecution didn't turn over evidence. Prosecution decided, well, that's not exculpatory, so we're not going to give it to you. The defense attorney didn't seem to do anything in this case, in my opinion. And the judge was definitely biased by, first of all, not being the judge that was up to hear this case, but taking over, and then allowing things to happen that shouldn't have happened. And when the jury come out, I get it. Jury comes out, they says they can't make a decision. The judge urges them, hey, go deliberate a little bit more, see if you can't figure this out, see if you can't come up with something, and then we'll talk. But to say by a judge to them, nope, you have to make a decision. You have to go back in. You have to come out with a decision. This is what he would get 12 months if you come back with not guilty of this. So it just seems to me like there was some serious issues, in my opinion, in this trial, in this investigation from the get-go. And you've got one person who's desperate and trying to get you to understand what happened and trying to get the truth out there and cooperating as much as he can. And then you've got another person who's lying completely, that can be proven by DNA, can be proven by what he says happened, by the seats going back when the seats don't go back. It just, I don't understand how from the investigation all the way through the trial, things were not done correctly. We are supposed to have fail safes in our judicial system. And it's like every fail safe that was there somehow was just diverted around. It is a crazy case, but it gets worse, really. So let's play out this some more, and there's still lots to talk about.
And that got filed too late. All of the appeals, which they spent hundreds, they fired Bridges, and which was probably a mistake, only in that he knew where all the
He knew the system.
Yeah, and he knew where there were openings. But she was just Dusty's mother basically ran the show, and she was so distraught with how little they had done and she fired him. And she says, that the deputy, Bridges' deputy, took her aside and said, "Look, you know how much money is at stake here? There's movie deals. There's all kinds of stuff that you can't fire us, right? This is going to be huge."
I think that's the least of a mom's concern right now.
Yes, and she was so irate at that point. Like,
what a weird thing. What
yes.
a weird thing to come back and say.
It was, yes, exactly. And so somehow the paperwork is filed too late in that system. It's hard to say, but all of his appeals, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of appeals, go nowhere. And then it's 1999, and Billy Brown gets sent to Red Onion, one of the toughest prisons in the world. Well, in the United States, basically solitary confinement. It's 1999.
And he gets sent there because he's been less than an ideal inmate.
Sure,
he hasn't changed yet.
No, he's making toilet wine and put in rubber rooms and assaulting guards and.
Billy.
But,
Billy.
Yeah. But just you think there's a break in the story, and something amazing happens. What happens to Billy?
He's in a cell 24 hours a day for a year and starts reading the Bible. And I've talked to him. He can quote the Bible from beginning. There isn't a verse he doesn't know. And you can question whether a psychopath can become saved, but who better?
Right. Yeah.
Right. He realizes what he's done. And when he comes forward, he calls his lawyer, and his lawyer says, "I don't believe you." He's like, "Look, it happened just the way I was so drunk, I don't really remember it, but it happened the way Dusty said. And, I've got to come clean or God's not going to let me into heaven." And so he writes a letter to Dustin Turner's mom, and she's suffered a brain aneurysm. So, she's, you can imagine what this has done to her.
Oh, yeah.
And, she's driving from Indiana to Virginia this whole time. Dusty's, on the edge of, he's thinking, "Oh, I'm a SEAL, I could break out of here." And, and then word comes from his mom that he has written her and said, "I did it. Do what you got to do. Send a lawyer. I'll sign an affidavit. I'll do whatever's needed."
And you would think this would be a huge break in the story. In fact, when he eventually does, get to attempt to right his wrong, like I said, the guy, he's a completely different person. He's quoting the Bible. He brings up Proverbs 28:13. This hits him hard while he's in prison. And he goes, "He who conceals his sins does not prosper, but whoever confesses and renounces them finds mercy." He wants to find mercy in the sight of God. And he says this very almost too bluntly on stand. And he says, "Hey, I'm not really doing this for Dusty. Like I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do. I'm doing this for God. I'm doing this to, for those reasons, basically the Dusty thing's a byproduct, but this is between me and my Lord and Savior. Like I have to do this."
So Brown comes out, they're convicted in 96. And Brown comes out, 3 years later in 1999, and says, "Dusty was correct. What he told you is how it happened." And he says, I'm not doing this for him. I'm doing this so I can go to heaven. You would think that would hold a lot of weight, right? That he's coming clean, not for his co-conspirator, but for himself. But he still doesn't get out of jail. And here we are in 2026, and he was just released about a week ago. It gets worse.
And it is an odd way to say it, but he's not wrong. You know, if that's what he believes, and obviously he's walking the walk and talking the talk, is he's in prison for life. He's not trying to get out of anything and get his.
New Barrier Restore Plus Soothing Ceramide Cream from
He just wants to confess his sins.
Right. And he's a completely different person since then. He's, he works with people on when they're going to get out. And, he's not as good as Dusty. Dusty started a recycling thing for his prison that then was picked up for the entire state.
Really?
And now California is using this system. He started a rescue dog thing to make them helpful dogs. He started programs because what do you do when you're a young patriot SEAL in this situation? You can either become part of the Aryan Brotherhood, or you can do good things.
And it just goes back to the picture we painted of him. Like, he was never this person. He's not this person. Even in jail, he continues to be who he really is. Someone who's not capable of this. Someone who's only told the truth. Someone who made a mistake, but doesn't deserve 80 years in jail for another person's mistake.
You know what's crazy too is that it almost gives it more credibility when he comes and says, "This isn't for him. I'm doing this for me." Like, it's almost like
right.
like I could get, maybe they were worried like, oh, he's just saying that to get somebody out of prison.
Right.
But
yeah, that's
there's another good point to that. And unfortunately, that is how the state sees it. They have a hard time doing the right thing, which is crazy to me that they even verbalize this. And they basically say, well, we can't set this precedence. Like, we have to fight this, because if we set this, you think it's over. It's over. The guy whose story has never changed, the guy who was the bad guy throughout this, who does the murder, who clearly has a motive to lie and out of vengeance bring you down with me, he finally comes clean and says he was right the whole time, which DNA evidence again will also prove. Instead of saying, hey, well, this is over, the state bucks back and says, well, hold on, we can't allow this, because basically every two person accomplice crime that's in prison right now, if one person just says, hey, the other person didn't do it, then we'll have to let a bunch of people out of prison. It will set a dangerous precedence. I don't know if you did a good job of explaining like their mindset behind that.
No,
In my opinion, they set a dangerous precedence by not turning over evidence. They set a dangerous precedence by forcing a jury to come up with a decision when the jury said we can't. They set a lot of dangerous precedences in this case. Having somebody come forward and then saying, okay, well, let's review it. He now says this happened. That isn't the dangerous precedence that they're making it out to be. Because, like he said, the DNA, everything supports what Dusty said happened. Everything. DNA, his co-conspirator, everything. But yet you still want the man in jail, and you gave the man who didn't actually do the unaliving more time, an extra 10 years over the man who did.
No, that's exactly what it is. There was a case called the car pitcher case, where an American Indian in Virginia was accused of molesting his stepdaughter, and he went away to prison. And then his stepdaughter came forward and said, "I lied about the whole thing. I just didn't like him." And they refused to let him go, and they used that as precedent for Dusty's case.
This is essentially what I hate, and this is basically mass punishment. No, that's not how it works. Just because one person comes clean doesn't mean it sets a precedence. If one person comes clean, then every case gets its due process, and we'll find out if someone deserves it or not. Like, it's crazy to me that's how they viewed this.
Exactly. He didn't get due process. At least not the way it's supposed to be done, in my opinion. You guys let me know. Did he get the due process that he deserved?
Yeah,
And
and
I get setting the precedent in court. That's a very, very big thing in court, setting precedents. But when you're talking about innocent until proven guilty and beyond a reasonable doubt, like I don't think that lumps into anything. That's not evidence. That's not like one part of the investigation or the court process. That's the whole fucking thing.
right. And they call it finality in Virginia. And once you've been found guilty, all of that innocent till proven, that's for your first trial. On appeals, they don't really use the same words, the same values.
You'd know it better. There's several aspects of this where it kind of feels like if it happened in a different state, it happened in a different way. But Virginia just has a couple really unique ways in which they run their judicial system.
Absolutely.
One including if you try for a governor, you have to correct me if I remember it right. But if you attempt a governor pardon and you don't get it, it's one shot and you're done, and you never get another chance at it again.
Yeah, they've changed that, but
and
a
one
big
time
thing,
that was
right. Yeah, the big thing that happened with Turner's case is this thing called Fishback. A guy named Fishback was a robbery charge, but it happened in the late 90s, and they asked if he was up for parole. Will he get parole? From 95, when they outlawed parole or got rid of it, to 2000, the courts did not tell jurors that there was no longer parole.
Oh, that might change some stuff.
Yeah. So they intentionally would not tell you there was. So Fishback sued the state, won, and then all the people that are between 95 and 2000 are eligible for parole. Nobody gets it, but they're eligible for parole.
The heartbreaking thing about this is, even though they fought it, when he comes forward with this, admission of guilt and pure guilt and clearing Dusty's name, he does get a retrial, or does get a lower court says, you know what, hold on, things have changed, and tell me how
it's called the writ of actual innocence, and it was they'd had to correct. They didn't used to have it. They didn't have if you didn't have, it was called the 21-day rule. If you didn't have anything but DNA after 21 days, if the actual killer came forward, if there was videotape or whatever, if it's after 21 days, it's not allowed in.
That's
so you can
crazy.
only
That's a Virginia thing as well.
Yeah, that was a Virginia thing. They changed
21 days for someone to magically come forward.
Right.
Day 22 doesn't matter. Still
exactly.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, it's this finality thing. So they changed the law, and that allowed Dusty to. Well, he'd already applied for a pardon from Governor Warner back then, and then they changed the law to where you could do this 20. And so Governor Warner got out of it because there's a legal way now that you can do this, so I don't have to pardon this guy.
Which I agree with. Like if there's a legal way to do it, sure, sit it down there.
And that's what happened. In 2008, I was out in Hollywood, and Dusty got his day in court. Virginia Beach, Judge Frederick Lowe heard the writ of actual innocence. They brought Billy in on the stand. I'm there with a camera, and he confesses to all of it. And the judge there says he's telling the truth. I can tell. All the evidence supports it. Vacate Dustin Turner's conviction. The state.
So they go back in court again, and the judge believes Billy Brown and vacates the conviction of Dustin Turner in 2008. Yet he was still in prison until 2026. This case infuriates me. I can only imagine how this affected Turner.
Appeals, Commonwealth appeals, and it goes to a 3-judge panel, a brand new judge that had just been put on the appellate court.
So before this,
yes,
Dusty, the family, everybody thinks he's getting out.
Yes,
he thinks he's getting out in a day, a week.
Right. He's giving all his stuff away in prison.
Yeah, why wouldn't you?
Right. Yeah.
A judge, a guy admits to it. The judge believes him. Finally, this nightmare is over.
Right. So
it gets appealed. It takes a year or so to get up to the 3-judge panel. So he's stuck in prison for a year waiting for the appeal.
And it gets to this 3-judge panel, and Cleo Powell, a brand new judge, to the 2 men on the panel agree with the lower court and say, yeah, let him go. And Judge Powell comes up with a theory that we have to believe Brown because the lower court said we have to believe Brown. And if we don't believe him, right, then everybody that's gone in front of these 3-judge panels, everything's wide open. So we got to accept that lower court. But what if Turner had bad intentions for her, and when he walked out to the car hand in hand, he abducted her by deception because he was going to rape and kill her on his own?
Those make up stories.
Yes,
exactly. What if he was a Martian?
Right.
Exactly.
Right. They basically
So she votes against, but he wins 2-1 at that court. But then they take that theory of the crime to the full
To the Virginia Supreme Court?
Well, first the
okay,
appellate court,
okay.
which guess who sits on that appellate court? Recuses himself, but the prosecutor, Bob Humphreys, is on the Court of Appeals. He'd jumped over all judges in the state from being a prosecutor to being an appellate court judge. And he recuses himself, but that court uses that theory and says, no, we're going to overturn the lower court.
And that's where I wanted to make a point earlier, and it comes back around and really all has to do with abduction, correct? I mean, that's really
Exactly.
what, once they've tied it into abduction, and this is what kills me, a theory of abduction. And this is what just drives me crazy about this case. None of the courts above them that overruled the lower courts of saying, nope, he's innocent. And then everyone else who they kept on appealing up to basically maintained this, nothing on the evidence of the murder, nothing other than this theory of abduction. And just us right here, we can go back and completely dismantle, this theory of abduction. We'll do it again. You don't show a driver's license to the friends of the people that you're going to abduct their friend. You don't have a rendezvous plan. So there's nothing that they get to bring this theory of abduction and say, okay, but these are things that they did, which would make sense that would ground this abduction theory. It's just a complete off the wall theory with no evidence supporting it. Yet they continue with it. And it gets through
Goes to the Supreme Court of Virginia and they side with it. And he's going to spend the rest of his life in prison.
That I don't understand. How can they say, okay, well, the judge says you're not guilty, but we don't care. You're going to spend your life in prison because we don't care, because we're just going to make up this story. That is seriously concerning for anybody in Virginia. Because like they said before, if this would have been any other state, he would have, in my opinion, been found not guilty, or only have been found guilty of accomplice after the fact. But Virginia gets to make up their own rules of what they turn over. They get to make up their own rules on who sits over a trial. They get to make up their own rules on what to do when a judge, 3 judges, say he's not guilty. And they get to say, we don't care.
Off of a theory of abduction at the end of the day. That's what it's over.
Yes.
Because if she dies at any point during this abduction, then the ruling stands, regardless of who killed her, how she died, what happened. Legally, the original ending of guilty is still true if you tie it to abduction.
Exactly. Then that was the brilliant
not
move.
Blow your mind? Just blows my mind.
I mean, you shouldn't even have to defend that. You shouldn't even have to bring the theory of abduction, to a falsity. But you did anyways, and they still.
And so if you see how, once I watched the second half of this documentary,
right,
completely changed my mind. I was still open-minded, but I was very,
he drove away. He handled the dead body. He put it, again, though, I don't know what else you're going to do.
Right. The man made a wrong decision. I can even kind of explain why it happened. I can sit on my high horse and say, should have never done it. Regardless of how you stand on that, the law says he didn't do the murder. He didn't defile her body. He never had intent to do anything bad. He got caught up in a bad situation, made a couple bad decisions that he corrected. No one forced him into it, that he corrected. That you do not deserve to spend the rest of your life in jail for a mistake you made and then undid. What does he deserve? He deserves what the law says that he should have got. Accomplice to murder after the fact. 12 months. Time served, you're gone. You want to slap him with something more, 3 or 5 years? Hey, it sucks to make a bad decision. What is going on to this man right now? It's just wrong. It's
exactly
wrong.
And you're not alone. The film, I think change.org has 8,000 signatures. There's a group of people, I call them Dusty's Angels, that have watched the documentary and started a website, freedusty.com. A lot of people, board, right senators, and anybody that gets down deep into the evidence of this case knows exactly what. Like you said, it's the second. I set it up to where you're not sure, and I did some cuts of the film where it was like a whodunit, but then you didn't care about Dusty. I had to lead off with Brown confessing so that that this is.
So pretty much the only chance that Dusty doesn't die in jail for a murder that someone else committed and put him into this predicament, it would still be a clemency from the governor.
Yep.
It was governor.
It would be clemency by the governor,
Youngkin.
right now it's Glenn Youngkin. There is parole but like I said, any of the fishback cases, they just give it a once over and because they have to. But I don't know if, but parole and clemency are the way to go.
It's just the name of the documentary one more time. So,
Target of Opportunity: The U.S. Navy SEALs and the Murder of Jennifer Evans.
Where can you see it?
You can see it on Peacock, Tubi, Amazon Prime.
Whoa, it's on those?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm a big shot.
You did that. It's all self-taught.
Yeah. Hey, and I say this, I feel like we've covered it, very, very, very fairly. I believe you covered it, very fairly. If
So that's kind of where I want to end that part. I don't see how this was why they were able to do this. I don't see how this is something that they say, oh, yep, this is what we're going to do. So this is Fox 59. Just a second here. Give me just a second, guys. So I'm going to show this. This shows his release from prison. Let me know if you guys can hear this. Actually, let me remove that. Stop screen. Let me double check and make sure I have it. Yeah, I didn't. Okay. Now we'll be able to hear it.
Our newsroom moments ago, a Bloomington man granted a parole release in Virginia after spending about 30 years behind bars. He is now a free man.
And take a look at the screen here. You see beside us, this is something his family and advocates are celebrating. Take a listen. Anna Darling has the latest developments. Anna?
Yeah, exactly. This is the video that we got from those who were there to greet Dustin Turner as he walked free, giving a huge hug, just saying, "Where's my mom?" when he got out, which was his mom has been his biggest advocate, I would say. Now he's walking free nearly 31 years after this. That's how long it's been that he's been incarcerated for his involvement in the murder of Jennifer Evans outside of Virginia Beach nightclub. Turner and a man named Billy Joe Brown were both convicted in 1996 for the death of Jennifer Evans. They were sentenced to lengthy terms, 82 years for Turner, 72 years for Brown. While Turner did admit to helping hide Evans' body, he consistently denied participating in her murder. He testified that Brown strangled her in a fit of drunken rage, but Brown claimed they both participated. The case took a dramatic turn in 2002 when Brown recanted his original statement and said he alone killed Evans. The Virginia Parole Board even vacated Turner's murder conviction for the lesser charge of accessory to the crime. That only has a punishment of up to 1 year in prison, but still he remained behind bars until January when the board voted 3-2 in favor of his release. Here's what Dustin had to say about Jennifer this morning.
I want to respect the family of Jennifer, and I've been asked that I not speak about Jennifer out of that respect, and there's a lot that I would love to say, and I'd love to say to them, but that's between Jennifer's family and friends and myself, and that's for them to decide. It's not for me to decide.
Now, Jennifer Evans' family released a statement saying in part, quote, "The parole board's split decision comes as a disappointment to us as we are forced to revisit some of the most painful moments of our lives." He is a free man now, and here's what he had to share about his future plans ahead.
One of the things I've learned through the years is what's important in life, what's important, the little things. A lot of things I know that people take for granted. I don't, and I'm not going to take those things for granted. That's what I've learned. And so my time in the coming future is to spend very quality time with my family and my good, close friends and advocates who fought for me over all these years.
Linda standing next to him in that interview right there. She's been working so hard to try and set him up with a place to live and a job as they look forward to putting this chapter behind them and starting to make new memories together. Daniel.
31 years. All he legally had to do was 1 year. This is his mom here. 1 year. Because he was an accessory after the fact. But because of the weird laws in Virginia, he had to do 31 years before he was paroled. Mind-blowing to me. So, one thing, when this came out, there were a lot of people who were really mad that he was released. I wasn't. And I posted on one of the sites, I said, I hope this man gets peace in this and has a good life with his friends and family. I also hope that the victim's family has peace. In my eyes, this man has more than paid his debt for anything he might have done and deserves to be treated like anyone else. And I stand by that. Okay, this man only, in my opinion, should have been convicted of accessory after the fact, which carried 1 year. He did 31. He did an extra 30 years for a crime he didn't commit. He's not completely innocent. He's not. He helped hide the body. He's not completely innocent. And this guy responded, it's good your eyes still work because that woman he helped dispose of can't use hers anymore. I'm glad you forgave him and her family. The law says he has paid his debt. So don't get mad at me. And I responded, I said, yes, he did wrong. Yes, he was an accessory after the fact. But that penalty is not 31 years. Yes, he has paid his debt and deserves to be able to move on from this. He said, I'd love to see what you'd say if it had been your daughter. He said, considering I do have a murdered child, I stand by what I said. And he said, then you are no better than the way Dusty treated the woman he tossed in the dirt. He still hid her body. Paroled is not exonerated. He's still a POS. I disagree. He paid his debt. He went to prison and he did 31 years for something that he was only legally responsible for a year. Because yes, he hid her body. Yes, he drove off, but he did not abduct her. He is not the one who murdered her. And that's not just coming from his mouth. That is coming from the person who actually murdered her. That is coming from a 3-judge panel who vacated his conviction for it. And yet there are still people who would love to see this man never see the light of day again. And you guys know my story. I stand by what I said. This man served his debt. If somebody goes to prison, and I'm not talking for murder, if they go to prison and they are paroled or they do their time and they get out, according to the United States law, they have paid their debt to society. He was 21 when he went to prison. He spent 31 years in prison. So he's, 52 now? You took this man's entire life for a crime he did not commit. People are cruel, but that's not the point. You want to backlash at me, that's fine. But the law says he paid his debt, right? And I feel bad for Jennifer Evans. I feel bad for her family. But the law is the law. And Virginia, in my opinion, broke all kinds of laws to get this man convicted of something he didn't do. Did he make bad decisions? Yes. But to then say, well, he now has to serve out his entire life, even though his verdict was and his conviction was vacated, is absolutely crazy to me. I don't understand it. So if you guys can figure that out, let me know. So that was going to be it for tonight for me, but I received this message and was asked to show it. So let me, is this it? Let me remove that. Yes. Okay. So, oops. Sorry guys, I'm doxing everybody tonight. Okay. Let me make this bigger. I've not looked at this yet, but I was asked to cover it if I had time. So let's take a look together and see what it is. Since day one, when I watched my baby's heart rate drop over and over again, I felt helpless. The only thing I'm thinking I was supposed to say in my power was to ask for prayers. I've never been a religious person. However, I can recognize the positive shift when there is a collective of love and positivity. Since a few had asked to send letters, I shared an address. We are extremely grateful for an overwhelming amount of support and love for Maya, and some for us and some for Dahlia. We are so overwhelmed. We need to ask that for whoever sees this to kindly hold off. We are desperately trying to transfer out of the hospital and have received so many packages and letters. We will need a storage unit. Well, over 1,500 envelopes, and they seem to come in packs of 50 daily. We aren't able to get through it fast enough. It is literally everywhere, especially since Maya has not been doing well in the past weeks. I feel like I'm screaming off the rooftops for someone to take a look and the doctors to say it's non-emergent. We ask you to please hold your well wishes in our heart. She is deteriorating mentally and physically. Wow, that's a lot of mail. So I'm not sure what this is about. So let me remove that. Let me see if the person who sent me that, can you give me some background as to what that's about? So let me, looks like, let's just look at the see ya later post. It says day one, heart and hustle, maybe. Almost a month has gone by. Still, none of this feels real. I feel like I will wake up and it will be over. Sweet baby, she had her breathing tube removed to see if she can breathe on her own. What a terrifying experience. I held her in my hand while she winced, but she's doing great. Best that could have been. My sweet girl is looking more like her beautiful self today. Dahlia is also coming to visit with her auntie she's been staying with. She's had a very difficult time with this as well. She's incredibly grateful. for the love she too has received so many caring people. We're going to have a Dahlia Day tomorrow. I'm looking forward to it. She seems focused on one of her favorite shows. Is this the little girl that was shot in the school shooting? Let's keep scrolling and see if we can find out what. It's about day by day. I want to say this is possibly the little one that was shot. So let's just keep looking here because I'm not for sure that this is. So it looks like she had emergency surgery. Okay, tell me what happened to this little girl, because it's really sad her family's going through this, but I need to know more. Day 7 update. So let's keep going down here and see if we can't figure out. That's day 5. So trigger warning here. Some of these pictures are going to be hard to see, it looks like. Day 2. Yes, this is one of the little gals from Tumbler Ridge. That's what I thought. Because I remember hearing about this. I just didn't know what her name was. So let me, yeah, this is the, copy that. Let me add this if you guys want. There is the Tumbler Ridge school shooting. So I'm glad she's doing better. I had heard of the little one that had got shot. And if I remember correctly, wasn't she shot in the head? Poor baby. So if you're sending mail, they're just asking everybody to hold off. She's definitely been sent a lot of mail. So hopefully the little one continues to recover. I don't remember how old she was, but I do remember seeing this. Poor thing. Okay, well, I am going to get off here for the night. I just wanted to cover Dusty's release because, like I said, I tried to do it the other day and somehow I managed to completely take off my audio and the other audio. So you guys let me know what you think of Dusty's release, and if you think it's right or wrong, or how you guys feel about it. And we will, if I can find it anyway, get out of here. And I'll talk to you guys later.
No amount of time will make us stray. We'll keep searching through the darkest day for every soul that's lost or gone. We'll fight until the break of dawn. American justice stands so tall. We won't rest until we found you. For all the lost, both the near and far, you're in our hearts, you're who we are. Through the nights and through the pain, we will say your name again. Every step we take is true as we continue to search for you. American justice stands so tall. We won't rest until there is justice for all the lost, both the near and far. You're in our hearts. You're who we are. We will continue to pray until you're home.